This is Garret Price, and you're listening to the Dynasty Hotseat.
Oh, yes. Welcome, everybody, to the Dynasty Hotseat. It's the only Dynasty show out there that is certified Inferno. And, guys, it's the best time of the year. It's not Christmas, but it's Garret Price time. He's back on the Dynasty Hotseat. Garret, great to see you, man. I think this is, your third, fourth time back in the show. It's becoming a yearly thing. It's great to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Yeah, I was trying to think about that the other day, how many times I've done the show, but every time I have a great time, so it makes it easy to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. And you always give lots of great insights, like you do, of course, over, I'm sure you know this already, but Garret, one of the absolute pillars of the amazing Dynasty Nerds team. Make sure you go and check them out, especially this season, right, Garret? Because if you want film, Dynasty Nerds, that's the place I go. I got to be honest and up front. It's the best place to be.
Oh my goodness, there's so much tape. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, somebody the other day was like, I can't find any Bowling Green tape to watch Harold Fannin. Yeah, we already have several games. Like, no big deal. Just real casual. All 22 games. It's not even broadcast film. Like, this is all 22, the best stuff. So I truly, like, you can debate, like, who has the best show, who has the best this, like, you can debate all that kind of stuff. I don't think there is anything even close to a debate as to what the best film library is in the industry.
Yeah.
Like, it's just all 22 you could ever want.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It really is an absolute blessing this time of year, and Garrett's going to use all that film and all that knowledge and put it to the test as we put Garret in the hot seat. We're going to go through these rookies. We're going to go 2 rounds in a Superflex draft. And Garret, it's the dream scenario for you. You got every pick. You crushed it. You got all these
look
picks.
At me.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. So let's still put them in order anyway, Garret. I don't know if you do. I don't know if you do that where sometimes you have like the first 3 picks and you're like, I'm going to be contrarian and take the third guy at 1 just to give him some flowers. Do you ever do that? I do that sometimes. Yeah. But,
well, it's sometimes too. Like, sometimes you play games with people a little bit because this is a game that we're playing, and you got to get in their head sometimes. So sometimes, like, if you have pick 3 and pick 5, normally the guy that I would take at pick 3, like my ADP, or not my ADP, but my rankings, I know the guy behind me desperately needs that position that I would normally take at 5. So I might take them at 3 and then force them to take somebody else so I can get the guy that I want at 3 at pick 5. So sometimes you have to get in your, like, league mate's head a little bit and try to figure out, like, where they're probably going to go. Do they desperately need a quarterback, or do they desperately need something? Sometimes you can fudge the draft a little. It's risky, but you could fudge the draft a little bit to try to get your cake and eat it too.
I absolutely love it. So Garret, let's stick to the standard for now. We're not going to play mind games with anyone. It's only yourself here. So let's roll it in. Who's going at 1-1 for you? There's a bit of a consensus going on at the minute the last few weeks. I wonder if you're going to follow that as well.
I hope the consensus is Ashton Jeanty, because it doesn't matter if it's Superflex, tight end, premium. I don't care if wide receivers get 2 points per reception. It's Ashton Jeanty at the 1-1. Like, he is the guy, far and away the best player in this class, regardless of position. So it's Ashton Jeanty at the 1-1 for me, no question about it.
What's your view on this? The only thing that seems to be a debate about Ashton Jeanty is, and it's not, in the grand scheme of things, it's not actually that important, but people keep asking, is he generational? Is he not?
Right now, so I'll go with what I've done so far. So this is my 6th year grading rookies, to where I actually have all my notes, all my numbers, the nerd score, all of that. This is year 6 for me doing the rookies. Of all the rookies that I've watched at that position, there's only one guy that's had a higher prospect score for me than Ashton Jeanty, and that was Bijan. Bijan was the only one to have a higher score, and it's not by much. So generational, like, I guess it depends on your definition. For me, technically, I would say no, he's not a true generational player, because to me, it's somebody that is far and away the best player over a 10 to 15 year period. And I don't think I can say that, because obviously I had one player slightly higher.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. You can't have Saquon be generational and Bijan be generational and Jeanty like that's
Right.
that's too many, right? That's too many.
That's too many
guys.
generationals.
So yeah, unfortunately for him. And Garrett, before we move on to 1-2, I've got some sad news for you, and it's tough. Do you know that 85% of people watching right now, they're not subscribed to this video? Can you tell them?
What?
It's
They're not?
crazy, right? What do you want to say to them?
I'm going to say, first of all, you're making a grave mistake. You need to know every time the Dynasty Hot Seat puts out a new episode. Every time. So make sure you're subscribed. Don't just subscribe. Make sure you get the notifications as well, because you need to make sure at the second that this drops, you need to be made aware. I don't care if it's your kid's birthday. Like, you are watching.
Absolutely. What a birthday treat that would be for these children out there. An episode of the Dynasty Hotseat with Mags and Garret Price. Love it.
That's right.
So let's move on and let's really celebrate this birthday, Garrett, with pick at 1-2.
1-2. So right now, 1-2 to 1-4 is very, very fluid for me. I don't have, like, if you were to say somebody different than who I take here, I'm not going to argue you on it. But for me right now, I would say Cam Ward is the 1-2 for me in Superflex. Really like his game. He's got a good arm, can make all the throws. He's accurate. I think he's a better athlete than he's been given credit for as well. So I think there's some things that he can do with his legs to make things happen. Everything about his character is spot on. He's got a ton of starts, which we really like to see at the quarterback position. He's not just a one and done kind of guy. Like, nope, he's got a lot of games under his belt. So for right now, Cam Ward would be the 1-2 for me. And I think there's a good chance he's the first quarterback off the board in the NFL draft, even if he's not the number one pick overall.
What have you thought of that sort of, I'm going to say a recent trend, but I'm not actually 100% sure if it is a recent trend or not, Garrett. We've seen with these quarterbacks coming in, it's actually the guys who have got tons of college experience and playing all these games that have been able to settle into the NFL a lot easier. Even guys you might not think of, like Brock Purdy, for example, had a ton of games over there, and he was able to come in and settle in, comparing to these like sort of blue chip prospects like an Anthony Richardson who've kind of struggled. Do you think that's just coincidence this is happening, or are we in the midst of a new trend happening?
I think it actually is a bit of a trend, and we actually did a study on this. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, here it is. So we did a study of this on the Dynasty Nerds page on kind of the hit rates on quarterback taken within the first 3 rounds, or just first rounds. So basically, if you have over 35 starts at the quarterback position and you're taken in the first round, you have about a 50% hit rate. And you only have about a 33% hit rate if you did not hit that 35 start threshold. So we are seeing a better shot of those later round guys. And in fact, if you're a quarterback that is a non-first round quarterback that did not hit that threshold of 35 starts, we do not have a single instance of any of those guys hitting, and that goes all the way back to the 2008 season. So that being said, I think there is a strong correlation to say starts at the quarterback position, even if they're a little bit older, is a good thing.
Yeah, I definitely have seen that. That's really interesting. I'm gonna have to go catch that article for sure and read up about it. But Cam Ward, he's locked in at 2. Do you stick with the quarterback position here at 3, Garrett?
I'm gonna go wide receiver. I'm gonna go with Ted McMillan here. It's very close, and just to ruin it a little bit, Shedeur Sanders will be the next pick at 4. And I mentioned it before. I don't think there's a huge difference between pick 2 and pick 4 right now. Take any one of those 3 guys. I'm not going to have a strong issue with it. Ted McMillan, I think he's far and away the best wide receiver in the class, assuming we're not considering Travis Hunter a wide receiver.
Yeah.
And if we were to find out that he is going to play full-time at wide receiver, I think he's absolutely right here in this conversation. I think there's a strong likelihood. We heard a report from Jay Glazer about a month or so ago of like 14 or 15 GMs that were interviewed on what position they would primarily have him play. All but one said DB. So I think that kind of gives us a little clue into most teams are viewing him as a corner first, and then this offensive chess piece second. So for me, I'm not going to put Travis Hunter up very high because of that. But Ted McMillan, he's got the size that you want. He's got the good fluid movement, much more fluid than you would expect for a guy of his size. He can do things, obviously, in contested catch situations. Love watching him run whip routes on the goal line, which is typically more of a, the smaller slot receiver type of player, good at whip routes, but he runs those pretty well. It's actually probably his best route that he runs. So I like a lot of what I see here from Ted McMillan. Then we get to Shedeur Sanders at 4. Shedeur, very solid quarterback. Another guy, he can make all the throws. Not the strongest arm, but there's no concern with his arm. Like, that's not a worry of mine. It's just not quite to the level of Cam Ward's, in my opinion. But he makes a lot of good decisions, a lot of good throws. You do have maybe a little bit of a different attitude that you're going to get with Shedeur Sanders versus Cam Ward. Partly his dad's Dion. Like, what do you expect? He does come in with maybe a little bit more swagger, a little more look at me than a Cam Ward would have, who seems to be more of a team first type of guy. We had Shedeur Sanders calling out his linemen early on in the season and different things like that. But as long as he's able to perform on the field and he can get his teammates to buy in, it's not going to be an issue. So I still think he's a talented enough player to go in this spot, and I feel good about it.
Yeah, Shedeur seems like a guy you kind of go, yep, tick here, tick here, tick here. Nothing really like blows you away whenever you're watching Shedeur Sanders. I suppose his accuracy would maybe be the thing that stands out to me the most. And for me, I really like it. If he goes to the Giants and they can fix whatever's going on with their O-line, I think Shedeur Sanders and Malik Neighbors just looks right on an NFL field, I think. So I'd be real excited if he ends up going to New York and pairing up with Malik Neighbors. And in terms of Ted McMillan, you're right. What an absolute freak athlete. I don't know, Garrett, I don't know if you know this. I mentioned it a few weeks ago. Someone, and it's not me because I heard someone else say it. Someone once was quoted saying the best wide receiver in the NFL is currently just playing in the NBA because those are the type of athletes that you get over in the NBA. Sure. Ted McMillan reminds me of a guy that could be playing like in the NBA, that kind of like freak athlete, right?
Right. No, that's funny. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that either.
Yeah, so he's an absolute freaking sure Sanders. He'll be just fine landing there at 1-4. So that was your kind of disputed section, Garrett. So moving on 1-5 then. Who's going for you?
For me, at this point in the year, I feel like this is where the draft really begins. I think most people are going to have Ashton Jeanty at 1, and then 2 through 4 is going to look something like this. Mm-hmm. Then when you get to 5, now let me ask this question. I'm not saying this position's going here. Is this a regular tight end or tight end premium in this draft?
So I've always left this up to the guest card, so I will leave that up to you. Would you like a little premium on here? Do you want to keep it regular?
Let's keep it regular. Let's keep it OG. Okay. I think more people probably have regular Superflex leagues than tight end premium, so we'll keep it OG as far as that goes. And so for here, man, there's a lot of good options, but this is probably where I'm going to start hitting running backs because I really like a lot of running backs in this class. I think there's a lot of really, really talented players. And I'm going to start off with TreVeyon Henderson. Now, some people will say, like, you love the Buckeyes, blah, blah, blah. And I do. I love the Ohio State Buckeyes. It's true. But I try really hard not to let that affect my analysis. I was never high on Trey Sermon when a lot of other people were. I gave Mayan Williams the second worst grade of any running back I've ever given. So I'm not just going to artificially puff these guys up. I wasn't even very high on Chris Olave. So, like, I'm not going to just artificially pump these guys up because they went to Ohio State. That being said, TreVeyon Henderson is, if this would have been 7 to 10 years ago, he would have been a little lower on my board. But the way that we see the NFL using Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane, Chase Brown, guys like this, that he's going to be such a good fit for today's NFL. He's got that legitimate speed. He's got good vision. He's got really solid pass game work and great in pass protection. So he's not anybody that's ever going to have to leave the field. Now, am I going to give him 20 carries a game? No, he's not that type of running back, but I am going to give him 10 carries and then another 5 targets out of the backfield. That I am going to do because I want to get this guy in space because he's a home run waiting to happen at any point. So, Travion Henderson for me here at 1-5.
I want to play a little game with these running backs with you, Garrett. At some stage, well, maybe not, but at some stage, just tell me when you wouldn't have one of these running backs as your number one overall running back from last year's class. So we'll leave it. I'm assuming you'd have Jeanty and Henderson as your number one running back from last year's class. So I'm just curious to see, when does that buck stop? No pun. I really did not mean that pun with the Buckeyes, by the way. That's completely unintentional right there. And of course, congratulations on your national championship as well, Garrett. I'm sure
Thank you.
That was wonderful to see. So Henderson's locked in at 5. Is there another running back coming off the board at 6?
Yeah, there's another Buckeye running back coming off the board here at 6, and it's Quinshon Judkins. I really like his tape. Yeah. If you go back to his time at Ole Miss, this dude, as a true freshman, put up over 1,500 yards in the SEC. Like, you just don't see that. He has an incredibly well-rounded game. He's got good speed. He's got good agility. He's got good hands. He's got really good power. There's a lot to like for an NFL team to say, this is somebody that has the true 3-down skill set. I could put him on the field and just be good. Now, will he get that? Who knows? There's so many committees now in the NFL. It's a lot harder to be a true 3-down back in today's NFL, but he's got that full skill set. So for him at 6, I know there's some people that would have him closer to, or at running back 3. There's people that would have him closer to running back 5 or 6. I have him right here at 3.
I've been wanting to ask you this question as well on the show, because I actually a few months ago I messaged you about this just on Twitter. You sort of mentioned like he hit that 1,500 yards in the SEC. It's so impressive. And I was messaging you last year about a prospect called Cody Schrader, who absolutely crushed it in the SEC, got 1,600 rushing yards and undrafted. Didn't go in anyone's draft, right? So for you, what is the big difference there between getting those amazing numbers, but also what are you looking for on tape to kind of differentiate between the numbers and the player?
Yeah, so part of it, one of the things I'll say is doing that as an 18-year-old kid versus Schrader was 22, I think 23. Like, he was an older prospect that was getting that done. So I think that is part of the equation, is grown man versus, a guy against his peers, and younger than most of his peers, actually. But it also comes down to the tape. What is the offensive line doing? What kind of skills does he have, and do those translate to the next level? There's certain guys that we've seen before put up big numbers in college football and then are not able to do anything else at the next level. Part of that has to do, if it's running back, part of that has to do with the offensive line. How good was that offensive line compared to, other teams? Because look, I am in my mid-30s now. I am overweight, and
you look great.
I played college football, so I do have a background there. But like, if you were to put me behind an all-pro offensive line, I could still probably get 500 yards. There's still like, the offensive line does so much of that work. It's what are they doing outside of what the NFL or what this college or NFL line is giving you? Like, what are they giving you on top of what's expected? And I think that's the difference. Schrader got what was expected with what his line did. Judkins is able to beat guys one-on-one.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, we see what happened to Brady Cook as soon as that line took a bit of a hit in the draft. It didn't end well for old Mizzou, unfortunately. So we got Judkins locked in. Who's going at 7?
This is the last guy of the group. This is kind of a tier for me at the running back position, and all 4 of these guys would be ahead just on tape score. Not what we know of the NFL and whatnot, just on tape score. All 4 of these guys are ahead of last year's class for me, and it's Omari and Hampton that I have here as the next running back off the board. If you want to put Omari in at 2, and Travion at 4, or mix any of this group up however you want. Another one where I'm not gonna have any issue with it. Omarion Hampton, I've liked for a long time. And then I watched this tape the first time around, and I was a little underwhelmed. And I couldn't figure out why. I was like, I've liked this guy for a long time. I've seen his tape before. I really liked it. Why, when I did my first deep dive, was I so down on it? What I realized was I watched it directly after watching Ashton Jeanty, which is just really not fair. Like, whoever you watch right after Ashton Jeanty, go back and watch again a couple weeks later, because chances are anybody you watch after Jeanty is going to leave you feeling a little bit disappointed. But when you're watching him compared to everybody else, you're like, man, for his size, we've got some really nice burst here. He breaks a lot of tackles and a surprisingly good pass catcher. Like, he's got really good hands at the position. So another guy where you have the size, you have the raw ability. He's got good vision and patience. Like, I really like a lot of what Omarion Hampton gave me. The only downside, and it's not even a huge thing for fantasy, there's some times where he'll bend with his waist a little bit to block defenders, which puts his head down, and that's going to put him in a bad spot. He's also not a guy that I think is going to break off a ton of huge runs. Can he hit a home run every now and then? Sure, but that's not the main part of his game. He's more of a guy that's going to get you chunks, 12 yards, 17 yards, guy, things like that. Like, that's more Omarion Hampton.
Would you like Hampton to go into a situation now where I think people are more accepting of these 1-2 punches, and like Sonic and Knuckles have made it cool again, right? So would you like Hampton to go into a situation like that where he has that sort of speed back to offset him a little bit, or do you think he could just be that 3-down workhorse?
I think he could be a 3-down workhorse. The right team, the right scheme, the right situation. I think he's good enough in the receiving game, and more than good enough, honestly. I think he's a very talented pass catcher, that he could do all 3 downs, and he's got the size and build for it, obviously. And you saw it at North Carolina. This was not a good team. This was a bad team this year. They lost a lot of talent over the past couple drafts, and the offensive line wasn't great. The quarterback was hurt week 1, so they're rotating quarterbacks in there. So everyone knew he was running the football, and he still got nearly 6 yards a carry. So there were a lot of times where he just said, hey, I'm going to put on the cape and I'm going to get it done myself. And he did. So there's a lot to like for Omarion Hampton.
I was expecting him to end up at linebacker at one stage. He did not like to take that guy off the field. He was just constantly there, which is, what an absolute stud. Love Omarion Hampton. He's locked in at 7. Garret, who's following him at 8?
Ooh, so now this is kind of a new tier, a new range for me of player. I'm going to go at this point with Luther Burden at wide receiver.
Yep.
I've flipped back and forth, and we can go ahead at 9. We can put Emeka Egbuka, because I've flipped back and forth between these two players. I can't tell you how many times. They win very differently. Luther Burden, yards after the catch monster. Obviously had a little bit of a down year this year, but really, really good after the catch. Basically a wide receiver in a running back's body. Like a lot of what I've seen with him. Emeka Egbuka is one of the safest players, especially this late in the draft. Does everything right, does everything the right way. Ohio State receivers, we know that they get the job done. If there's a wide receiver from Ohio State that goes in the first 2 to 3 rounds, probably going to be a pretty darn good pro. All-time receptions leader at Ohio State with all of those amazing receivers that they've had.
Wow.
So there's just a lot to like in Emeka Egbuka's game. 2 guys that win a little bit differently, but I like both players.
They're so close for me as well, and it is tricky because you look at Luther Burden this year and you think, oh, well, okay, but then last year, I mean, I think that's what we really want to see out of Luther Burden, and that was obviously helped with better quarterback play all around, and more of a more dominant Mizzou team than we've seen this year. Egbuka as well. I keep coming back to it, and it's been the drum I've been beating all off season. And for me, Garret, there's nothing I love more than having a really super safe slot receiver that I can have as my wide receiver 3 on my team. I don't need to worry about them. I think that is so important for any dynasty team you have. It's just having that consistency. We know Amon-Ra St. Brown, that is the gold standard of that. But a guy like Egbuka could be someone that gets like 10, 12 points a week. That's so important to go to the playoffs and go deep in a championship, right?
Yep, absolutely. Could not agree more.
Yeah, and you've got these, I mean, these Ohio State guys, like just crushing it everywhere you look. They're just, yeah. I think your three guys finished in the top 12. You had Jackson Smith and Jigba, Garrett Wilson, and was Jerry? No, Jerry Judy, was he an Ohio State guy?
No, he was an Alabama guy.
He was an Alabama guy. Sorry, I think there was another guy in there from Ohio State in that top 12 for sure. So we've got Igbuka locked in alongside Luther Burden. 3 picks left of the first round. Where are we going next?
Oh man, there's a lot of different directions that I could go at this point. I am this is probably going to be, I think so far, pretty close to chalk. I might have been a little higher on the Ohio State running backs than other people might be, but outside of that, I don't think I've gone too far off board. This one might be a little off board for some people, but I'm going to go with Cam Skattebo. Cam Skattebo out of Arizona State. Man, loved this guy's tape. His ability to be able to break tackles, to be able to catch passes naturally as a receiver. Like there's a lot there. He's going to run in the 4.6s. Like he's not a burner at all. But he does everything else so well. And he makes guys just make the wrong decision. Like making the defender wrong is an absolute skill set. And he can do that with his ability to make guys miss and with his power. So he does that really, really well. I know it's a little high. He's running back 5 for me right now. I would probably, if this was a real draft, I would play chicken a little bit more, knowing how there's a lot of people that might wait a little longer. And I bet I could probably get him at 2-1, 2-2, but I'm just kind of going more off of my rankings.
Are we getting close to that klaxon of wouldn't be RB1 in last year's class, or are we still putting them ahead?
No, last year's RB1 ended with Omari and Hampton. So that's kind of where that ended. And then now all of these guys would be intermixed with Benson and Brooks and all these guys.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I love seeing Skattebo up there. He's kind of a guy the whole season is like, I like this guy. And then the playoffs started. I was like, I'm not going to get any of this guy. He's going to be pushed right up to the top. So it's like, okay, I'll move on to somebody else. But we got Skattebo in there. 2 picks left. Garrett, where are you going with your penultimate pick in the first round?
If this was tight end premium, I would have had him go a little bit higher, but it feels at this point I got to take Tyler Warren, tight end out of Penn State. Really, really talented player. He's got the size, he's got the hands. Like there's really no obvious deficiency in his game. Comes from a school that has put out NFL caliber tight ends before too. So you've got kind of that school pedigree there as well. So Tyler Warren is not quite to the Ashton Jeanty level, but he's pretty close to a sure thing at the tight end position. Nobody's ever bulletproof, but you feel very confident that he's going to hit at the next level.
Last 2 episodes, I've thrown out a name with Tyler Warren. It sounds like an insult, but it's actually a compliment. He's got a lot of Taysom Hill in him, like just this freak athlete, right?
I hear what you're saying. I could see that a little bit.
Yeah, and it's just Taysom Hill started when he was like 26 years old. Tyler Warren, a lot more time to learn the position, a lot more time to come in. Like this guy's running jet sweeps. They've got him taking snaps here. He's doing everything. Kind of like I think they even rushed with him a few times. So it's kind of like let's just use this freak athlete and put him in and see what happens. And we've seen how Taysom Hill's a roller coaster for fantasy, but this guy could be a roller coaster as well. It'd be so much fun.
Absolutely. No. Yeah. Warren's a really good player. It almost feels wrong having him this low. Like, I'd consider putting him a little bit higher, but without the premium, it's just harder to take some of these tight ends.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So he's locked in there at 11. Who's the final pick of the first round for you?
Let's go back to the running back position here. We're going to go back and we're going to go with Caleb Johnson. There are people that will have Caleb Johnson all the way up as running back 2. I'm not quite as high on the kid as other people are. I don't think he's a bad player by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's a very talented player. I just don't think he belongs in that same tier as Hampton and Judkins and those guys. But he's another guy that could have 3-down capability. He's a bigger back, more physical back, but he's got very, very soft hands. So I think at 112 that most people would see that as a steal at this point, because I think in a lot of drafts, he's going to be going somewhere 6 to 8. But I think this is the range I'd feel a little more comfortable in with Caleb Johnson.
I love it. And you can just see with that first round, they're all that green. 6 of the 12 in that first round are running back, just to show you the strength of this class. Garrett, we're gonna speed run through round 2 here. So why don't you give me your 2-1, 2-2, and 2-3, and then we'll zone in on one player to talk about.
All right, let's go with Colston Loveland.
Yep.
Then we're gonna go with Devin Neal.
Mm-hmm.
And then we will go with put Travis Hunter on there.
Ooh, let's do it. So yeah, Travis Hunter's the anomaly there, right? I've been asking a lot of my guests, Garrett, if they do come out and wherever he goes, they read out Travis Hunter, defensive back, Colorado. What happens? Do you still take a little flyer on him anyway? Put him on a taxi squad, see what happens?
You definitely take a flyer. You definitely take a flyer on him. And right now, this is kind of my hedge here at 2-3. Because like I said, if he's a wide receiver, he's probably going an entire round earlier than this spot. If he's primarily a defensive back with just some play at wide receiver, he's probably going mid-second to late second. And then if it sounds like he's just going to primarily just be a defensive back, then you're looking at a 4th, 5th rounder just as like a, whatever upside type of play just in case. So this is kind of hedging for me a little bit here with Travis Hunter. He's obviously got the skills. He's got the raw ability. He's not as refined as some of these other receivers, but the raw ability is absolutely there.
I keep reading there's a chance Tennessee are talking about taking him at 1 overall. Can you see that happening?
I think that's a real possibility. I think that's a very real possibility.
Yeah, that'll be real interesting to see what happens if he ends up over there. They need a couple of receivers as well. He could end up playing both. You never know. Who knows what's going to happen? Yep. He's good enough. That kid's real special. So he's locked in there along with Devin Neal and Colston Loveland. Who's going at 2-4, 2-5, and 2-6?
Let's go with Matthew Golden. Then we're gonna go with let's put Trey Harris.
Yep.
And then Jalen Milroe.
Let's do that. I can't find Trey Harris's name. Let's type him in. Jalen Milroe completely fascinates me, can I be honest? I seen a tweet today, not from any old, or it was a YouTube video today, not from any old guy. ESPN put out a video today saying, is Milroe going to declare at another position before the draft even starts? This is where we're at already. This is silly season, right?
It's really, really interesting. You watch him in his tape. He's definitely a subpar thrower of the football. That's clear as day. But you could also argue this is the best athlete, maybe like in the draft, maybe outside of anybody not named Travis Hunter. Like just as like a pure freak athlete, like Jalen Milroe is a freak. So you have that insane rushing upside if he does stay at quarterback. But even if he ends up becoming a running back, who knows how long it'll take for him to transition into that. But he has the size and the skill to do it. I mean, he's 6'2", 220. He's a big boy. So it would be really interesting if he did switch.
I think one of the worst things that could happen to him is if he's taken super early in the first round and he gets thrown in right away. I would hate to see that happen.
I would not love that. No.
Yeah, he needs to go in. He needs to sit. I mean, people have been talking about the Seahawks taking someone to sit beside Geno for years. Something like that would be really cool to see him go in and learn from someone and go from there. I do not want to see him starting in year one. But yeah, I like this position here for Milroe at 2-6. Who are your next group of 3, Garrett?
Ooh, next 3 would probably be Dylan Sampson.
Yep.
Then Alec Aomanor. I'm still working on the pronunciation there.
See him, me too, yeah.
And then let's go with Jalen Royals.
So let's have a little chat about Jalen Royals. He's become a little bit of a topic of discussion. I don't know if you've seen the video of him at the Senior Bowl just bullying some defensive back. That was insane. Is that for you stereotypical of what Jalen Royals is all about?
Jalen Royals is a physical player. He played at a small school. You look at the numbers right off the rip. You're like, the numbers aren't that great. And then you realize that it was only in 8 games. You're like, oh, these are fantastic numbers then. So
Yeah.
he put up some really good numbers. He's got the adequate size. You're looking at about a 6-foot tall receiver, but he's built pretty thick as well. So he's over 200 pounds. So he is a legitimate NFL body. He's got pretty solid speed. He's definitely a little bit more of a project, but a project that I'm more than willing to take the risk on at this point at 2.9.
Yeah, I love seeing him crop up every now and again in the second round, just about here. Just definitely someone to keep an eye on, and maybe under the radar prospect for everyone watching. Keep your eye on Jalen Royals and go check out some of his tape as well. 8 games, absolutely smashed it. So he's locked in at 2.9. Who is your final group of 3 for the show, Garret?
Yeah, it's tough to cut anybody off at this point because there's so many players I would love to still get in here. For me right now, oh man, I'm gonna go with Ollie Gordon.
Yep.
Darn it, Quinn Ewers.
Ooh, okay.
And Damian Martinez.
Damian Martinez. It's Quinn. Oh, I was about to say Sleeper haven't added on Quinn Ewers just to pile on like more of the misery. Are you surprised Quinn Ewers declared for the draft?
A little bit, but I think at this point Texas was very ready for Arch Manning, and so I think he would have probably ended up transferring had he not. So I think that was kind of his decision was, do I want to transfer or do I want to take my shot at the next level? He was a guy that kind of was ready to go early in college. He was, a guy that went to Ohio State, redeclared, so he could go to Ohio State, was there for a year, and then obviously went on to Texas and had a good career. If you didn't have somebody with that type of pedigree behind you, you're feeling pretty good about what you did, but everybody's kind of all waiting for the next Manning to come through. And the little glimpses Arch gave us looked pretty darn good as well. So I think that's the tricky part for Quinn Ewers is you're just really stuck in a tough situation. But there's a lot to work with Quinn Ewers. Yeah. And while I don't believe he's going to be a round 1 quarterback, I do think he is going to go on day 2. And we've seen a decent amount of success from some guys in the 2nd and 3rd rounds, even into the 4th round over the past few years, where you look at guys like Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins. Like there's definitely some opportunities there kind of in that range where I think he's going to go get the right possibility, get the right team, the right coach. And I think Quinn Ewers could end up being a decent quarterback because the arm talent is arguably the best in the class. It's just kind of all of the other little things that hold him back.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that we should see get a shot at some stage, unless he ends up in a weird place, kind of like with Hendon Hooker, he's never really going to get a chance without an injury. But I think he's a guy that we're going to see come in and at least get a shot in the NFL. And Texas, that's no joke going there. So he should be ready for it. Shouldn't be fazed too much by the bright lights. So I can't wait to see what Quinn Ewers can do. God, that brings us to the end of our 2 rounds. But just before I let you go, everyone's favorite topic, sleeper picks. If you got maybe 1 or 2 guys, you're like, you know what? No one's talking about this guy, and I think he's the real deal.
Yeah, as far as like a deep sleeper, I don't know if I have anybody I'm in love with yet. The one guy I will say that I'm keeping an eye on, and it's particularly because I watched his maturation into the playoffs. What we saw out of Will Howard at quarterback, in the beginning of the season, mid-season, and then even late there, where had that brutal loss where he did not have a good game against Michigan, to the flip that seemed to switch for him into the playoffs. Now, granted, you have arguably one of the best supporting casts in college football with the receiving core that he had, the running backs he had, really good offensive line. But he made some throws at times that left you going, maybe there's something here. And he's a good enough athlete as well that he could get you some rushing. If he goes in that 2 to 4 range, kind of like where I was just talking to Quinn Ewers, if he goes in that 2 to 4 range, there might be a team that gives him a shot, especially as an older prospect, and say, like, let's just see if he can do it at the NFL level. So he's a guy that I am kind of keeping an eye on. And in my super flex drafts, I'm more than willing to take a shot on in the 3rd round, just in case, because we know how valuable quarterback is if he hits.
I love that. Love that. Getting him in. And oddly similar to, I just had the last guy who were saying that it was Cal McCord was actually their guy that they were keeping an eye on as well. So he was killing it too, both obviously at one stage playing for your Buckeyes. And Garrett, that does unfortunately bring us to the end of the show. I just wanted to say thank you, mate, so much once again for carving out a piece of your day to come onto the hot seat. Can you tell people, if they don't know already, where can they find all your great work?
Yeah, you can find all my work at Dynasty Nerds, dynastynerds.com, the podcast, all that kind of stuff. And we're doing a lot on social media and things like that. But if you want to connect with me directly on social media, you can find me at Dynasty Price on X.
Absolutely fantastic. So, Garrett, once again, thank you for coming on. Thank you, everybody at home, for listening. This has been the Dynasty Hot Seat. We'll see you very soon.